Western Teacher Live, talking about public education, unionism and much more.
Hello and welcome to Western Teacher Live, the podcast of the State School Teachers Union of Western Australia. I am here with Matt Jarman, the President of the SSTUWA, and our subject today is class sizes and the Target 27 campaign, which the union is undertaking now to put pressure on the state government to recognise the importance of class sizes in delivering education to all children. Matt, tell us a little bit about Target 27.
Target 27 is a member-orientated and delivered class size campaign, one that came from one of the 4 resolutions on April 23. And the reason why we have the class size campaign, not only because it backs in polling that we did with parents, but also because all children deserve a quality education and they deserve the individual attention that they need to thrive. And smaller class sizes are one way to deliver that. But unfortunately, for many year groups across Western Australian public schools, class sizes are the highest in the nation. Our minister and our former minister selectively identifies and cites research that tries to argue that class sizes don't matter. But yet, in the Facing the Facts report, Carmen Lawrence and her team, they identified global research which said actually class sizes matter and matters very significantly. The minister's selectively going through individual pieces of research simply doesn't pass the pub test. For example, Bob, would it matter if there were 50 children in a classroom or 100? Of course, class sizes matter. Smaller class sizes mean more individual attention, they mean fewer distraction, they mean better relationships between students and teachers, students and students. All of those 2 points add to lower conflict and better behaviour engagement. And the research that Carmen and the team identified also identified that students stay in the school system longer and that they learn more and they have more critical thinking skills within their learning. So yes, class sizes matter. Our members know that, and that's why they passed the resolution on April 23 in 21 different locations around WA for a class size campaign, which I'm really glad that we're launching at the beginning of Term 4 this year.
And one of the issues the government comes back with, as well as cost, which we'll come to in a moment, but they say, look, on the one hand, the SSTUWA is saying there's a teacher shortage, and on the other hand, they want smaller classrooms, which would demand more teachers. What's your answer to that?
Well, teacher burnout and the loss of experienced teachers is linked back to the enormous difference in our class sizes compared to other states around the country. So my question back to the government, what's it going to look like if you don't deal with this? Class sizes are is probably the biggest lever that the government can pull for learning achievement, reducing teacher workload and burnout, and also teacher retention. This is the solution to all of those problems if the government changes its mindset and pulls that lever.
Now, that when we're talking about pulling the lever, the campaign Target 27 is focused on years 4 to 10. That is because the WA number is 32. Is the maximum number for the supposedly for the classes, which is way above many of the other states, from numbers ranging from 2 to 5 to 7, depending on which state you compare it to. There are other members who'll be out there going, well, what about my classes? What about my kindy classes? What about my year 11 and 12? You are making submissions to the government about that, but the focus of this particular campaign is years 4 to 10, correct?
Absolutely, and just like the Logger Claims 2023, we have practical class size reduction targets, we have pre-primary class size reduction targets, and we have year 11 and 12 class size reduction targets. This campaign is focusing on getting the government to change its mindset around class sizes full stop. And we think that we can work with a government that can really identify the value for doing this and allowing us to move forward across all of the issues that we've got, including the practical classrooms, the 11 and 12s, the pre-primaries. All of our class sizes need to be reviewed by government, but the 4 to 10s is where the biggest gap is to other states in this country, and it is the 4 to 10s where we think we need to commence.
And in terms of the other instant government response, it's going to cost us too much. You've spoken about massive surpluses for the government, that they have the money to do it. Is the number as high as they were saying? So, for example, during the general agreement negotiations, massive figures were pumped out, but they looked like they applied to every single class in the state. And of course, not every single class is over the required numbers, but it's the ones that need to be targeted, correct?
Correct, Bob. According to the department's own semester by semester data for several years now, 3 or 4 years, 80% of all of our classrooms in this state have been at the notional size of 27. That's 80%. We need to fund more teachers and classrooms for the remaining 20%. So kudos and hats off to the school leaders who have already identified that class sizes matter by getting 80% of their classrooms down to 27. What we are trying to fund is 20%. The FERFI numbers that were floated during the course of bargaining in the public arena were around 100% of all of our classes needing to be reduced. Factually incorrect, economically irresponsible, and not what we're asking government to consider. And we're also considering, or putting forward to the government, is that we need to do this in a staged and incremental way. We're not suggesting that 27 needs to begin on January 1, 2025. We're asking government to consider an incremental approach to reduce the class sizes down to 27.
You referenced community feeling a little bit earlier. We did some community research towards the end of 2023, and there was no doubt there that the public understood class sizes were an issue.
Fascinating to listen to the polling and listen in on the polling with parents. We had regional mums and dads separately and together, metropolitan, northwest, all turning around and saying the same thing. We don't know how teachers are coping in those large classes. We just leave our children and hope for the best. We want to see reduced class sizes. All of this came from the polling data. We just don't know where the teachers are going to come from. That was their only concern. Where are the teachers going to come from if there is a teacher shortage?
Something like, Matt, I think, and the figures have changed, the way they've done the figures have changed recently, but last year, or in the 2023 annual report of the Teacher Registration Board, there were over 5,000 teachers who had left the industry but were still registered. How important is this in getting some of those 5,000 back?
The biggest cohorts that are leaving are the very, very first starters and the most experienced 50-year-old plus teacher. We need to keep both ends of the scale. But the 50-plus-year-old teacher, the person who would be in the staff room mentoring the graduates, and the limited registration teachers who we've got in increasing numbers in our WA schools, they are the target group. They are still maintaining their registration quite clearly with the TRB, but they don't want to run a full-time classroom with this workload and this burnout. So clearly the solution is do something about the workload and the burnout and reduce the class size. That's what I mean by one of the 3 parts to the levers that this government can pull if it chose to and rectify one of those issues.
And in terms of those numbers and how they work with the public realises what the problem is. What about teachers? We've talked to teachers through surveys. You obviously talk to members all the time at district councils and other events. What do teachers say about the importance of having manageable class sizes?
Well, again, for teachers, they want to go to work every day and do their job to the best of their ability. It's the distractions and it's the excessive workload that's driving them out. When you reduce a classroom from 32 down to 27, you've just reduced your class, your workload, your burnout, your parent communication, etc., down by at least a fifth or a sixth. It's a significant change to anyone. It allows you to do your job to the standard that you know you can do it. High class sizes mean you are just running around all day, barely touching on the skills and the surface that you want to with your ability to teach. And sadly, teachers get frustrated by that. And in this world right now where job opportunities are everywhere for teachers, they're off. And we're seeing that in regional areas, we're seeing that in the metropolitan areas. And of course, that's not going to change anytime soon. So this is much, much bigger than just what the teaching industry needs. This is about retaining the most experienced people that we have. This is also about the new teachers who are coming into the system that we need to have listened to those experienced people. And we need to get onto this straight away. So that's why we're proposing to the government that the class size campaign is a lever that they can pull that solves a lot of problems but it doesn't need to be done overnight. They can invest this significant additional surplus, which would pay for all of it, incidentally, in one foul swoop. They can pay for all of it in one go and have this done incrementally over the next 3 or 4 years.
And one of the big issues that's come more and more to the surface, and people sometimes don't like to talk about it because they feel it's putting down public education, but the reality, sadly, is that behaviour and particularly violence in schools has been a significant focus of the media. How does smaller class sizes help with that?
Well, smaller class sizes, as I'm sure anybody who is involved with children anywhere in the world, who coaching or whatever you may be doing, better relationships between one another provides more stability. And as a consequence of that, you have less conflict, better behaviour engagement, less time telling children that they can't do this, they can do that, they need to do that, and more about what it is you're trying to cover in your lesson. Everybody who's inside the game and everybody who's watching it from the outside understands what this is about. So what we really need to get back to is what it is we are expecting our teachers to do. Smaller class sizes will allow our teachers to do what they are uniquely very, very good at doing in Western Australia.
And where can our members expect to see this Target 27 campaign coming up?
They can expect it from the first day of Term 4, and the campaign will continue to roll. This is a really important time as we head towards the March 8 election. We know that all political parties will be poking their head up and having a look at what the election asks are of the Teachers' Union and also what we're campaigning on. All of those political parties will be putting their promises into stone right now, and they're also starting to be putting their economics together as to what they will prioritise and what they won't. So the campaign is running right now to get the attention of all political parties. So it doesn't particularly bother me which political party puts their hand up and says, we will do something about reducing class sizes. We want everyone to understand the research behind the value of it, the investment that smaller class sizes means for the WA community, and make sure that it is part of the March 2025 state election outcome.
And those ads will be running in places like the West Australian. There'll be a significant digital presence online across social media, including the West again. You've also got ads that'll be running on your local music or podcast downloading system, Spotify, for example. So it's going to be across the board. Where can members see all the material in one go?
And not for the sake of being a traditionalist, but also there'll be a mobile billboard harassing a lot of political officers and other spaces, I won't reveal them all just yet, over the first 4 or 5 weeks of the campaign. And we'll review how that progress is going in that period of time, and we'll continue to refocus the campaign at the same time. Teachers can come to our website. There's a landing page for the class sizes, and we've already got running, and it's been advertised many, many times through e-news, class size queries that members may have. So if they are in that unfortunate position of being over the maximum class size, there's a direct access point there for them that we will then take that issue up as an individual case, as we've been doing for several weeks now on behalf of members who simply didn't know where to go to because they were at a maximum or they were in an overloaded position.
And that was a win from the general agreement, where it was agreed that the principals would have to provide extra resources to those with above-sized classes. So you can fill that in. The data helps with our campaign. Nobody's identified, but it helps us identify where the issues are, almost geographically as well. But it certainly helps members who aren't getting those resources that they have been promised. Sorry, you carry on.
Just on that, just not forgetting that EBA 23 also includes the requirement, not the option, the requirement of principals to take on board the number of students in a classroom with a documented plan and to make sure that they are equitably distributed across classrooms. That's a really important change. We've seen members walk out of the profession because they've had a dozen or so IEPs or students with documented plans in their classroom, and the classroom next door had none at all. That sort of behaviour and that kind of arrangement is already finished thanks to EBA 23. So once we have that in place with smaller class sizes, as a system and as a local school, will be in a much better position.
And that is a crucial point that you make, because that 32 number was sitting there long before this explosion in diagnosed issues that can affect how students learn and how they need to learn.
Well, it's a historical fact now, and it is very disappointing and sad to say this, but the last time a state government addressed class sizes was literally 40 years ago this year. 1984 is when the last, and it was a Labor government, it was Bob Pearce as the Education Minister, set in stone some reduced class sizes. We have been living off the back of 1984 class sizes for 40 years, and the world, I don't need to remind our members, has changed enormously since 1984.
And that is a pretty extraordinary stat, 40 years since class sizes were addressed in Western Australia. So find out all you can about Target 27. As Matt says, you can go to the SSTUWA website. You'll be able to search Target 27. I'm sure it will pop up with the digital ads and the stuff in the West and all of those materials on the website. If you're one of those who has access to a copy of the Facing the Facts report, I commend you to read their section on class sizes, which is beautifully researched. Matt mentioned they reviewed over 100 studies, or they reviewed a review of over 100 studies, which captured the most important changes in a classroom environment resulting from small classes, and the advantages are legion. And it's time for action after 40 years. Matt, thank you for joining us. And above all, thank all our members for joining us on the Western Teacher Live podcast.
Members can access a complimentary simple will where appropriate. For more information or details about a complex will, visit sstuwa.org.au/wills.